She chuckled as I was thrown onto the street the day after my son's funeral, claiming the house was hers. But when the lawyer opened the sealed envelope, I knew karma was due. I still recall the exact, chilling moment that call came through. It was 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, the coldest November night I'd ever experienced in Dallas. Adam's voice, my 45-year-old son, was shattered on the other end. "Mom, something's wrong." My chest. "I can't breathe." The line went dead, leaving behind a silence far colder than the winter air. By the time I reached the hospital, Adam was gone. A massive, irreversible heart attack, the doctor explained with the detached clarity of someone reciting a financial report. Nothing they could do. Adam, my vibrant, successful son, the sole light of my life, had vanished. Victoria, my daughter-in-law, stood beside me in the sterile waiting area, her face a mask of shock and grief. But I caught something else, fleetingly, in the stark overhead lighting. Not sorrow, but a faint, undeniable flicker of relief. No, surely the devastation had twisted my perception. I dismissed the terrible thought, blaming the crushing weight of my bereavement. What happens now? I whispered, unable to process the finality of Adam's absence. Victoria straightened her shoulders. Her composure, which had been so brittle, suddenly hardened. "Now we deal with reality, Martha. Adam is gone. And I have decisions to make." The sudden, glacial coldness in her tone sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. Victoria and I had never been close. Adam was the only bridge, the fragile, golden span connecting us. Now the bridge had collapsed, and I was beginning to see the terrifying depth of the chasm that lay beneath. "Of course, dear. We'll get through this together," I said, reaching for her hand. She recoiled, a movement barely perceptible but unmistakable. "We'll see about that." I should have recognized those words for the stark warning they were. Instead, I rationalized her behavior, telling myself, people grieve differently. Some break down, others turn inward and stoic. Victoria, I concluded, was clearly the latter. The funeral arrangements consumed the next 3 days. I offered to pay for everything. Adam was my only child, after all. But Victoria insisted on handling every detail herself. "I am his wife," she kept saying with a strange emphasis. I know exactly what Adam would have wanted. I focused on crafting his eulogy, notifying distant relatives, and simply trying to hold myself together. At 67, I had buried my parents and my husband, but losing a child felt like a specialized, searing kind of hell. The night before the service, as I sat in the silent guest room of the house Adam and Victoria shared, the house I had helped them purchase, I found myself staring at the framed photographs on the dresser. Adam's college graduation, their wedding day, Adam holding his niece. But I noticed the absence of something. There were virtually no recent photos of Adam and me. Victoria had systematically removed them, I realized with a sick lurch in my stomach. When had that quiet erasure begun? A soft, hesitant knock interrupted my thoughts. Victoria stood in the doorway, no longer bothering to hide the calculating glint in her eyes. "We need to talk, Martha." The funeral service was impeccable. Victoria, I conceded, possessed an almost frightening organizational skill. The floral arrangements were elegant, the music was Adam's favorite classical piece, and the reception afterwards was flawlessly choreographed. What was not beautiful was watching my daughter-in-law perform the role of the devoted, heartbroken widow while dropping subtle, pointed comments about moving forward and starting new chapters. I was standing in the receiving line, accepting condolences from old neighbors, when I overheard Victoria speaking to her sister, Sarah, shielded by a massive display of white lilies. "The life insurance policy alone will clear the mortgage for the next 2 years, she was saying in a low, conspiratorial whisper. "And without the extra expenses, what about Martha?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern. "Where will she go?" Victoria's laugh was sharp, brittle, and chillingly devoid of emotion. "That is no longer my problem. She's an adult. She can figure it out, just like the rest of us." My blood ran cold, turning to liquid ice in my veins. I had been living with them for 3 years, ever since I sold my own property to help fund the initial $60,000 investment Adam needed to launch his tech startup. the startup that was now wildly successful. Adam had insisted it was temporary, just until I found a smaller place. Somehow, temporary had stretched into permanent, and I had become comfortable in the routine of helping with the house, cooking dinner, and feeling needed. Apparently, I had been naive beyond measure. Martha. Victoria materialized at my elbow, her public facade firmly locked in place. Could you help me in the kitchen? There are some things we absolutely must discuss privately. I followed her through the crowd of mourners, past my sister who was flying back to Phoenix in the morning, and into the kitchen. Victoria closed the door, the click of the lock sounding strangely final. I am going to be direct, she stated, her voice calm and disturbingly businesslike. This house was in Adam's name, which, in our marital agreement, means it is now legally mine. I require time and space to process my grief without, and I must use this term, complications. Complications? I managed to keep my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. Your continued presence here, Martha, is simply not working anymore. I need my privacy. The word struck me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Victoria, I understand you are grieving, but surely we can. No, she held up a perfectly manicured hand. I've made my decision. I will give you until tomorrow evening to pack your things. That should be plenty of time. I stared at her, searching desperately for any remnant of the woman who had once called me mom, who had hugged me on holidays, who had wept tears of joy when Adam proposed. That woman was gone, replaced by a ruthless, predatory stranger. Where exactly do you expect me to go? I finally asked. Victoria shrugged, adjusting the expensive black crepe fabric of her dress. You are a grown woman, Martha. You'll figure something out. The casual cruelty of her dismissal was breathtaking. Adam would be absolutely horrified by this conversation, I stated, my voice shaking with righteous anger. Adam is dead, she replied, the words flat and final, echoing in the sterile kitchen. And the sooner you accept that, the better off we will both be. I packed my entire life, all 67 years of memories, into 4 suitcases and 2 medium-sized boxes. A life reduced to what could fit into the trunk of my modest sedan. As I folded my clothes and wrapped the few remaining photographs, I waited. I kept waiting for Victoria to come upstairs, to burst into the room and apologize, to say she had spoken out of shock and pain, and of course, I could stay until I found a permanent, suitable place. She never came. Instead, at exactly 6:00 p.m. the following day, she appeared in the doorway, her arms tightly crossed over her chest. Time's up, Martha. I zipped the final suitcase closed and looked around the room that had been my sanctuary for 3 years. The walls were bare now, stripped of the few personal touches I had been allowed to add. It looked like a generic guest room again, which, I supposed, it always had been in her eyes. I'll need a few more minutes to carry everything to the car, I said, my voice heavy with resignation. I'll help you. It was not an offer of assistance, it was a firm statement of eviction protocol. Victoria wanted me gone, and she was determined to ensure the process was expedited. We made 3 silent trips down the pristine marble staircase. As I loaded the last box into the trunk of my sedan, I turned to her, desperate to make one final, reasoned appeal to whatever sliver of compassion might reside in her heart. I know you are angry with me for some reason, I said quietly, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. I truly wish I knew what I had done wrong so I could try to fix it. Victoria's expression did not soften in the slightest. You didn't do anything wrong, Martha, she said, her voice a chilling monotone. You just exist in my space, in my life, and in my way. Adam felt sorry for you. I don't. The honesty was brutal, a sharp blade plunged directly into my soul, yet somehow cleaner than the years of polite, thin-crusted fiction we had maintained. I see. I got into my car and rolled down the window. Will you at least tell me if there's going to be a formal reading of Adam's will? I assume he left something. Why would he leave you anything? Victoria sounded genuinely baffled, a clear indication that she simply did not view me as a person deserving of independent means. You're not his wife, and it's not like you ever contributed financially to our household expenses. The sharp irony almost made me laugh, or weep. The $60,000 I had invested in Adam's startup, the countless hours I spent managing the books in the early days, not to mention the value of the free childcare I had provided for her sister's children, a favor Victoria had coerced me into, all of it had been conveniently erased from her memory. Clearly, she had either genuinely forgotten or successfully convinced herself that my substantial investment had been a mere gift for Adam, never to be considered a contribution to her life. Of course, I said, managing a dry, dignified tone. Silly of me to assume otherwise. I drove away without looking back, heading toward the nearest affordable hotel I could find advertised online, a Quality Inn on Route 68. It was the closest place I could manage while I figured out the crushing logistics of the next phase of my life. In the rearview mirror, I watched Victoria stand in the driveway until my car finally disappeared around the corner. She looked triumphant, a queen claiming her undisputed territory. At the hotel, I checked in for a week, my savings account already screaming a warning. I carried my suitcases into a generic room that smelled faintly of ammonia and failure. I sat on the cheap, worn polyester bedspread and stared at my reflection in the mirror above the dresser. Who was this woman staring back at me? A widow, now officially childless, suddenly homeless, and apparently utterly worthless in the eyes of the last person who should have offered me comfort. But as I sat in that sterile, desolate room, something unexpected began to stir beneath the grief. It was not despair, though that clawed at the edges. It was something harder, sharper, something that felt disturbingly close to anticipation. Victoria thought she had won. She believed she had successfully discarded the inconvenient mother-in-law and claimed her entire prize. What she didn't know, what she could never have understood, was that Adam had been a far better, more observant son than she had ever given him credit for. 2 weeks into my painful hotel stay, just as I was seriously beginning to worry about my rapidly dwindling savings, the crucial call came from Adam's attorney. Mrs. Evans, this is James Morrison from Morrison and Associates. I handled your son's legal affairs. Yes, Mr. Morrison. I remember meeting you at Adam and Victoria's house closing 3 years ago. I'm calling to inform you that the initial probate process is complete, and there will be a formal reading of Adam's last will and testament next Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. in my office. Your presence is specifically required. My presence was required. I sat up straighter, ignoring the protest of the cheap mattress springs beneath me. I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion, I said, trying to contain the rising tide of hope. Victoria seemed certain that, Mrs. Evans, Mr. Morrison interrupted gently, his voice firm. I can only tell you what Adam's legally binding will specifies. And it specifically names you as a beneficiary in a critical provision. I will see you next Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. After he hung up, I stared at my phone for a long, silent moment. Adam had left me something after all. It might be something small, a family heirloom, or perhaps his childhood baseball card collection. Victoria wouldn't be happy about it, but she would have to live with whatever Adam, in his final moments of clarity, had decided. The faint, thrilling anticipation I had felt earlier solidified into determination. I knew, intuitively, that Adam hadn't just left me a keepsake, he had left me a message. I spent the weekend frantically searching online for affordable one-bedroom apartments within my meager budget. My savings account could cover another week at the hotel, plus a security deposit and first month's rent, but I would have to be extraordinarily careful. My Social Security income and the modest pension from my 25 years of teaching 4th grade would have to stretch much further than I had originally planned. The following Tuesday, at 1:45 p.m., I sat nervously in the parking lot of Morrison and Associates. I watched Victoria emerge from a sleek, silver Mercedes-Benz, wearing an exquisitely tailored suit that likely cost more than my entire quarterly budget. She had brought someone with her, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit, whom I recognized as her brother, Marcus, an attorney notorious for his predatory tactics. He kept checking his phone impatiently when I walked into the reception area. Victoria's face immediately darkened with disbelief and fury. What is she doing here? She demanded of the receptionist, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Mrs. Evans is here for the will reading, the young woman replied professionally. Which Mrs. Evans? Victoria's voice rose slightly, betraying her surprise. Both of you, apparently. Marcus leaned over to whisper something urgently into Victoria's ear. She nodded curtly and then took a seat across the spacious waiting room from me, making it unequivocally clear that whatever temporary, forced civility might have existed between us was officially and permanently terminated. Mr. Morrison appeared promptly at 2:00 p.m. and ushered us into his opulent, wood-paneled office. He was a kind-faced man in his late 60s with silver hair and gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of lawyer who still believed in doing right by his clients, not just maximizing their billable hours. "Ladies, gentlemen," he began, settling behind his immense mahogany desk. "I know this is an immensely difficult time for everyone, but Adam was extremely specific about his final wishes. I will read the will in its entirety, and then we can discuss any specific questions you may have." Victoria sat forward eagerly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Marcus pulled out a legal pad, ready to document every detail. I simply folded my hands and waited, feeling a strange, quiet certainty blooming in my chest. The initial sections of the will unfolded exactly as I had predicted and Victoria had already celebrated. She inherited the house, the luxury vehicles, Adam's extensive retirement accounts, and the substantial life insurance policy. Victoria nodded approvingly at each item, occasionally shooting a brief, smug glance in my direction that radiated pure, unadulterated satisfaction. Then, Mr. Morrison's voice shifted subtly, changing tone, and I knew we had finally arrived at the critical, unexpected turning point. "There is, however," he stated, adjusting his glasses, "one final, highly specific provision that Adam added to this document just 3 months ago." The atmosphere in the room instantly shifted, becoming heavy and tense. Victoria stopped nodding and leaned forward abruptly, her eyes suddenly sharp with laser focus. Marcus froze, setting down his pen with a quiet thud. I found myself instinctively holding my breath. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat delicately and continued reading from the official document. "To my mother, Martha Evans, who provided the foundational investment for my company, Evans Innovations, and has never once requested repayment or a formal equity stake, I bequeath the entire, undivided contents of Trust Portfolio D701 at First National Bank, along with all associated investment documentation, access codes, and account information contained therein. This portfolio, I established 5 years ago, serves as the final repayment of her initial faith and investment." "A trust portfolio?" Victoria's voice was a high, sharp shriek, shattering the solemn silence of the office. "Adam never, ever mentioned a private trust portfolio." Mr. Morrison looked up from the will. Apparently, it was an asset he maintained privately. He was extremely specific that the contents must be transferred directly to his mother. The instruction is unambiguous. I was just as surprised as Victoria, though for entirely different reasons. A trust? Adam had never mentioned anything so formal to me either. What could he possibly have placed there that was meant specifically for me, designated as repayment for my long-ago investment? What exactly is in it? Marcus demanded, his lawyer's instincts kicking in, sensing a potential challenge. "I have no idea of the precise contents," Mr. Morrison replied honestly. Adam simply provided the bank trust information and detailed instructions that Mrs. Evans should have full and immediate access upon his death. It is designed to be self-executing. Victoria's face was rapidly flushing a deep, angry crimson. "This is completely ridiculous. If there's anything of real value in that portfolio, it must be subject to probate and distributed as part of the primary estate. We absolutely need to contest this provision immediately." "You are certainly free to pursue a challenge," Mr. Morrison said mildly, remaining utterly unruffled. "But the provision is exceptionally clear, and Adam was demonstrably fully competent when he added it to his will. I personally witnessed and notarized the document myself." "When exactly did he add this provision?" I asked quietly, my voice surprisingly steady. Mr. Morrison consulted his notes on the desk. "Exactly 3 months ago, on February 15th. He came in specifically to make this critical addition." February 15th. I remembered that date with painful clarity. It was the day after Valentine's Day, and Adam had seemed unusually quiet and withdrawn during our family dinner. Victoria had been aggressively complaining about a neighbor's party, and Adam had barely spoken a single word throughout the entire meal. I realized now that he hadn't been quiet, he had been planning. "This is an utter waste of our valuable time," Victoria snapped, abruptly standing up, pushing her chair back violently. "Marcus, let's go. We will file a formal challenge first thing tomorrow morning." "Actually," Mr. Morrison interjected smoothly, pulling out yet another document from the file. "Before you both leave, I need to inform you that Adam left specific, time-sensitive instructions for his mother regarding the immediate contents of that trust portfolio. Mrs. Evans, he wanted you to access it within the next 48 hours, once the bank has completed the necessary documentation." He handed me a thick, sealed manila envelope. "These are the bank documents, the full access codes, and his personal, highly encrypted key. The bank will need to officially verify the death certificate and process the paperwork before you can access the portfolio. It typically takes about 2 business days." Victoria's eyes fixed instantly on the envelope in my hands, narrowed and sharp like a predator watching its prey. "I am absolutely coming with you to the bank," she declared firmly. "I'm afraid that is simply not possible, Victoria," Mr. Morrison interjected, his tone authoritative. "The trust portfolio access is strictly restricted to Mrs. Martha Evans only. That is non-negotiable bank policy and Adam's explicit written instruction." "This is utterly insane," Victoria sputtered, her composure finally cracking. "How do we even know there's anything genuinely valuable in there? It could be entirely empty, or just sentimental trash." I slowly stood up, clutching the envelope tightly to my chest. "I suppose we'll all find out later this week, won't we?" As we filed out of the lawyer's opulent office, I could feel Victoria's furious eyes drilling into the back of my head. In the parking lot, she cornered me directly beside my sedan. "Martha, let's try to be completely reasonable about this whole situation," she began, her voice dripping with an oily, false sincerity. "Whatever is contained in that portfolio, we should absolutely share it. Adam would have certainly wanted his lawful wife to benefit from anything significant he left behind." For the first time since Adam's death, a genuine, cold smile touched my lips. "You made it abundantly clear just 2 weeks ago that you did not believe Adam would have left me anything of consequence. Now, suddenly, you are deeply concerned about sharing?" "I'm just saying, you are saying whatever you believe will grant you immediate access to that trust portfolio," I corrected her calmly, unlocking my car door. But Adam was exceptionally specific. "The contents, whatever they may be, belong exclusively to me." Her mask finally slipped completely, revealing the cold, predatory calculation beneath the thin veneer of civility. "Don't forget this, Martha, you are effectively homeless. You desperately need my goodwill far more than I need yours." I paused with my hand resting on the car door handle, looking directly into her frantic, desperate eyes. "Actually, Victoria," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I truly don't think I need anything from you at all. Not anymore." 3 business days later, after meticulously providing Adam's official death certificate and completing the bank's extensive, complicated paperwork, I finally stood before the imposing door of the vault at First National Bank. The bank manager, a woman named Mrs. Peterson, was expecting me. She had clearly been fully briefed on the highly unusual situation because she offered her condolences with genuine sincerity and personally escorted me to the deep vault area. "Trust Portfolio D701 is one of our largest units," Mrs. Peterson explained gently as we walked through the heavy security doors. "Your son rented it approximately 5 years ago and visited it quite regularly, sometimes as often as twice a month." 5 years? Adam had been planning and preparing for something for 5 years. Mrs. Peterson used her master key while I nervously inserted Adam's personalized, encrypted key, and the enormous, heavy box smoothly slid out. It was indeed large, about the size of a substantial briefcase, and surprisingly heavy, suggesting its contents were not just paper. "Take all the time you need, Mrs. Evans," Mrs. Peterson said kindly, showing me to a small, private viewing room deep inside the vault area. "I will be at my desk if you require anything." Alone in the small, windowless room, I took a deep, shaky breath and slowly lifted the heavy lid of the trust portfolio box. The very first item I saw was a handwritten letter, addressed simply to Mom, penned in Adam's unmistakable, familiar handwriting. My hands trembled violently as I opened the crisp paper. "Mom," it began. "If you are reading this, then I am gone. And Victoria has likely already shown you exactly who she truly is. I am deeply sorry for that pain, but truthfully, I am not surprised. I have known for years the kind of person I married, and I have been systematically preparing for this exact possibility." My heart pounded furiously against my ribs as I continued to devour his words. "You selflessly gave us $60,000 for the foundation of my company, Evans Innovations. I know you thought of it as a loan, even though you were too loving and generous to ever ask for formal repayment. I have been investing that money, and adding to it whenever I could, for the past 5 years. The assets in the accompanying accounts are not just repayment, they are what careful, aggressive investing has professionally grown into. I set the profoundly moving letter down with shaking hands and looked at the documents beneath it. They were sophisticated investment portfolios, detailed account numbers, and certified bank statements. My eyes scanned the balance sheets, trying desperately to make sense of the overwhelming figures. The total was staggering: $2,500,000, invested in a diversified portfolio of real estate and municipal bonds, all legally structured in my name, and all immediately accessible with the proper documentation. I picked up Adam's letter again, hardly believing the incredible magnitude of what I was reading. I also gradually discovered that Victoria has been actively telling people you contributed absolutely nothing of value to our household. What she conveniently failed to mention to anyone is that the house mortgage has been automatically paid, fully and independently, from my separate salary account for the entire time you've lived with us. Any cash you gave us for household expenses went straight into this trust portfolio for your future, not our day-to-day spending. I have been meticulously documenting everything, Mom. Every malicious email, every cruel text message, every casual, manipulative comment she has ever made about you. It is all contained in the digital file labeled documentation, the full truth. I thought you should know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, what kind of person has been living in our home, manipulating both of us for years. My vision blurred instantly as I reached for the encrypted flash drive and the thick paper folder he had mentioned. Inside the folder were printed emails, detailed text message screenshots, even photographs of her extravagant credit card statements, all providing undeniable, concrete evidence of years of insidious manipulation and calculated deceit. The final paragraph of Adam's heartfelt letter made my eyes immediately fill with hot, blinding tears. "You deserve so much better than the way she has treated you. Take this money, Martha, and build yourself a beautiful, independent life where no one, ever again, can make you feel unwanted or worthless. And Mom, please do not tell Victoria anything about this trust, or its true value, until you are completely safe and legally secure away from her. Trust me on this one final instruction. All my love, your son, Adam." I sat in that small, silent room for nearly an hour, meticulously reading through every single document Adam had meticulously left for me. By the time I emerged, I had a terrifyingly clear, comprehensive picture of exactly how my daughter-in-law had been systematically manipulating both Adam and me for years, preying on our love and trust. Mrs. Peterson helped me carefully transfer all the documents and the encrypted drive into a large, secure envelope and patiently explained the complex process for immediately accessing the investment accounts. As I walked out to my car, my phone rang. "Martha?" Victoria's voice on the phone was now artificially sweet, dripping with forced affection. "I was just wondering if you'd like to stop by the house for a late lunch today? We could finally discuss what you found in that trust portfolio." I smiled faintly at my reflection in the car window, a smile that held more steel than warmth. "That is very generous of you, Victoria. I will be there precisely at 12:00 p.m. It was time for Victoria to learn that sometimes, the people you most grievously underestimate are the very ones who hold the power to deliver the most shocking, irrevocable surprises. I arrived at Victoria's house, her house now, at exactly noon, carrying a small, unassuming gift bag and wearing my absolute best poker face. She answered the door wearing a flowing, deceptively simple silk dress that likely cost more than my first new car. She was all wide smiles and effusive, false warmth. "Martha, I am so truly relieved you came. I've made your favorite lemon herb chicken salad, just the way you taught me. It was deeply ironic how she suddenly remembered my favorite foods now that she desperately wanted something of immense value from me. The dining room table was set with her extravagant wedding china and freshly cut flowers. Victoria had clearly poured meticulous effort into staging this entire performance. She poured iced tea and chattered incessantly about trivialities, the unpredictable spring weather, the minor social scandal of a neighbor's party, while I sat quietly, calmly watching her work up the nerve to discuss what she truly wanted. So, she finally began, settling into her chair with rehearsed grace, her eyes carefully searching mine. I have been thinking deeply about yesterday, about that peculiar trust portfolio. Have you? I replied calmly, taking a slow sip of my tea. I know we have certainly had our difficult differences, Martha, but Adam would fundamentally want us to support one another through this impossible time. Family should always stick together, don't you agree? Family. That word, coming from the woman who had brutally thrown me out the day after her husband's funeral, tasted like a lie on her tongue. I couldn't agree more, I said evenly, meeting her gaze. Victoria's eyes instantly lit up, clearly convinced she had found the perfect opening. I am so truly relieved to hear you say that. I was worried you might still be angry about having to find your own place so quickly, but you understand that I simply needed space to grieve, correct? Of course, I said, taking a measured bite of the delicious chicken salad. Grief affects everyone so differently. Exactly. She leaned forward eagerly, dropping her voice conspiratorially. So, about whatever Adam left you. I was thinking we could pool our resources, combine whatever was in that trust with Adam's life insurance payout. Perhaps invest it all together? I happen to have some truly wonderful financial advisors in mind. I bet she did. The very same advisors who had likely been encouraging her questionable, extravagant spending habits for years. That's very thoughtful of you, Victoria, but I am curious, I asked, feigning innocent confusion. What exactly makes you so certain there was anything financially valuable in that trust portfolio? She paused, clearly not expecting such a direct, disarming question. Well, Adam was always so private about certain financial matters. He must have had an extremely good reason for keeping something completely separate. Private? That's an interesting choice of words to use. You know what I mean, she said, waving a hand dismissively. Men and their convoluted financial planning. They never tell us wives absolutely everything. I carefully set down my fork and looked directly at her, letting my tone soften into something cold and knowing. Actually, Victoria, I think Adam told you exactly as much as he thought you needed to know. Something dangerous flickered in her eyes, uncertainty, perhaps a hint of genuine fear. What exactly did you find in that portfolio, Martha? The moment of absolute truth was rapidly approaching, but I was not quite ready to play my highest card yet. Instead, I reached for the unassuming gift bag I had brought. I brought you something small, I said, pulling out a small, wrapped package. A little thank you gift for the lovely lunch. She unwrapped it eagerly, revealing a framed photograph of Adam from his college graduation, beaming proudly. Her face softened momentarily. Oh, Martha, this is truly lovely. Thank you. I thought you should have it, I said. After all, you were such a devoted wife. The carefully placed emphasis on devoted was not lost on her. She looked up sharply, her eyes scanning my face for hidden meaning. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing at all, I replied lightly. I'm just appreciating how exceptionally well you always took care of my son. Victoria set the photograph down carefully, her entire demeanor shifting dramatically. The fake sweetness was rapidly evaporating, replaced by a weariness born of tension. Martha, stop being cryptic. Just tell me precisely what was in the trust portfolio. I smiled slightly and took another sip of my tea. Documents, mostly. Very, very interesting reading material, in fact. What kind of documents? Oh, you know. Standard financial records, complex investment statements, some correspondence. And, I paused meaningfully, leaning forward slightly, quite a few printed emails and text messages. The color instantly drained from Victoria's face. Text messages? Adam was exceptionally thorough in his record-keeping, especially toward the end of his life, I explained conversationally. I slowly pulled out my phone and opened the photo album containing the high-resolution screenshots Adam had taken of various conversations. Would you like to see one? This is from about 6 months ago. I turned the screen toward her, showing a screenshot of her texting her sister, Sarah. The words were a knife in the heart. God, I cannot wait until that old bat finally moves out. Then we can convert her ridiculous room into the private home gym I've been wanting for years. Victoria instinctively lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back smoothly, easily out of her reach. There are literally dozens more, I said, my voice maintaining a calm, almost professorial tone. Adam was apparently very adept at digital documentation. This next one is particularly enlightening. It's you texting Marcus, your brother, about how you've been systematically convincing Adam that I should contribute thousands of dollars to household expenses when the mortgage was already completely budgeted for from his salary account. Stop, Victoria's voice was barely a choked whisper, her eyes wide with terror. And then there is the devastating email, I continued, my voice now cutting through the silence like ice, where you are literally laughing with Sarah about how gullible I was, how incredibly easy it was to make me feel like a financial burden when you had already finalized your plans to kick me out the very day after Adam's death. I set the phone down gently and looked at her with what I hoped was mild, detached curiosity. That was rather forward-thinking of you, by the way. Planning my immediate eviction while Adam was still, technically, alive. Victoria's carefully constructed composure finally, completely cracked. He had no right to save private messages. That is an invasion of privacy, she screamed, her voice hoarse. Actually, Victoria, he had every legal and moral right, I corrected her calmly. It was his phone, and you were aggressively discussing and planning the destruction of his mother's life. The real question is, what precisely are we going to do about this current situation? What do you want? The mask was now completely off, revealing the ugly, calculating rage beneath. Want? I don't want anything material from you, Victoria, I stated firmly. I never did. That was always your singular motivation, not mine. Then why are you doing this? What is the point of completely humiliating me right now? She cried, grabbing the edge of the table. I considered her question seriously, tilting my head. You know, you're right. There is absolutely no real point in me humiliating you. You've done that perfectly well yourself over the past 3 years. I don't understand any of this. You threw me out of my home the day after my son's funeral, I reminded her, the memory flooding back with searing clarity. You viciously told me I was worthless, that Adam felt only pity for me, and that I had contributed nothing of value to your comfortable household. I stood up slowly, rising above her. But here is the devastating truth you never understood about Adam. He saw everything. Every cruel comment, every manipulation, every calculated lie you told him. Victoria was gripping the table edge so tightly her knuckles were ghost white. And you want to know the truly beautiful part? I continued, my voice softening with deep, profound love for my son. He documented all of it. Not to hurt you, but purely to protect me. Because Adam knew, with absolute certainty, that once he was gone, you would immediately show your true, ugly colors. You can't legally prove any of this would hold up in court, she challenged desperately. Court? I laughed softly, and the sound surprised even me. It was the sound of sweet, liberating victory. Oh, sweetie. I am not taking you to court. Why would I? Victoria blinked, completely confused by my response. You're not? Why not? Why would I? I repeated, placing the heavy folder from Adam's trust portfolio onto the immaculate table between us. You've already given me everything I could ever possibly need. I still don't understand what you are talking about. Adam left me far more than just those digital text screenshots, Victoria. He left me 5 years' worth of undeniable, certified evidence showing exactly how you've been manipulating both of us. Documents proving I was the original investor in Evans Innovations, certified bank statements showing that my initial investment has grown to $2,500,000, all securely held in my name in a private trust portfolio. She stared at the folder, her breath catching rapidly. "This is impossible," she whispered, shaking her head in denial. "You are living in a dreadful hotel." "I am living in a hotel because I chose to be there temporarily while I planned my next move," I corrected her pleasantly. "Not because I am unable to afford better. Thanks to Adam's profound love and foresight, I am now financially independent and completely secure for the rest of my life." The long, agonizing silence stretched between us as Victoria finally processed the full magnitude of this information. I could almost physically see the wheels frantically turning in her mind, trying to calculate what this massive loss of control meant for her luxurious future. "How much?" she finally choked out, the word barely audible. "How much money did Adam actually leave you?" I calmly closed the folder and stood up, reaching for the empty gift bag. "That is truly none of your business anymore, is it, Victoria? You had your turn. I am his wife. I have a right to know the full value of the estate. You had a right to know what your husband left you, which, as I recall, was quite generous," I reminded her coolly. "The house, the cars, the life insurance, his entire retirement accounts. I'd say you made out exceptionally well, before this discovery." Victoria shot to her feet, her chair scraping violently against the hardwood floor. "You manipulative, vengeful old witch. You are trying to steal what is rightfully mine." "Steal?" I raised an eyebrow, genuinely amused. "How exactly would I be stealing anything? Everything I have was given to me, legally and explicitly, by my son, who had every right to dispose of his private assets as he saw fit. He was my husband." "Yes, he was," I affirmed, gathering the final documents. "And apparently, he knew exactly what kind of wife you truly were." Victoria stared at me for one long, terrifying moment, and I could see her desperately recalibrating. The threats were useless, so she switched tactics one final time. "Martha, please," her voice became pleading, wet with sudden, manufactured tears. "Let's be truly reasonable about this. I know I've been difficult since Adam died. I was grieving, I wasn't thinking clearly. But we are family. We must work together." "Family," I repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, you mentioned that just moments ago. Right after you told me Adam felt only pity for me and that I'd never contributed anything of value to your household. I didn't mean that. I was upset. I said things I didn't mean." "Oh, but you did mean them, Victoria. That's precisely what makes Adam's extensive documentation so valuable. He saved you saying the exact same things, word for word, multiple times, to multiple people, over a period of 3 years. Victoria's composure was entirely gone. "What do you want from me, Martha? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I am so sorry I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry I asked you to leave. I'm sorry for everything." I simply shook my head. "I want nothing from you, Victoria. But Adam's final act was to teach me, and perhaps you, a profound lesson about the true value of trust and genuine love. I am leaving now to use the funds Adam left me to start the Adam Evans Foundation, dedicated to helping senior women who have been financially abused or displaced. I am taking his legacy of generosity, which you tried so hard to poison, and turning it into a force for good." I walked toward the door, turning back one last time. "You may have the house, the cars, and the possessions. But I have the truth, I have Adam's love, and I have my future. You are left with the silence and the undeniable knowledge of your own actions. That, Victoria, is a far greater punishment than any court could ever deliver." I closed the door gently behind me, leaving Victoria alone with her beautiful china, her expensive suit, and the crushing weight of her own exposed deceit. I walked away from that house not as a victim, but as a survivor, carrying not just a fortune, but the profound, eternal love of a son who planned the perfect defense against cruelty. This story proves that true wealth is not counted in dollars, but in the loyalty and foresight of those who genuinely love you. Never let bitterness define your next chapter, use the truth to build a legacy. Subscribe and hit the like button if you believe justice always finds a way, And comment below to share your thoughts on Adam's incredible final act of devotion.